Hey, and welcome everyone to this reading of, this little book called Pasqualino Acquaviva and the Lupo Mannaro. I wrote it a few years back along with some translations, really for two reasons. One was to remember Operation Avalanche that took place in southern Italy in September 1943. And my mom and dad remember that invasion. It was the beginning of the retaking of fascist Europe in World War II. And I fictionalized it with two small boys. And it takes place in my mother's birth town, her hometown in southern Italy in the region of Campania, in a town called Monteforte Cilento. The second reason is that I wanted to create some sort of a legacy for my children and grandchildren to remember where they come from, because we really don't have a lot of written history about our family. Yeah, so let's just have some fun, and I'll begin with this reading, and I hope you enjoy it. Pasqualino Acquaviva and the Lupo Mannaro. The dedication. Without my mom's and her family's experiences of being born and growing up in Monteforte Cilento, Campania, this story would not have been possible. Mille grazie dal cuore, baci ed abbracci. And for those of you who don't speak Italian, it means 1,000 heartfelt thanks, kisses and hugs. And I'd like to acknowledge the people, the inhabitants of Monteforte Cilento. So here's the story. Now, Pasqualino, Mama told the small, dark-haired 5-year-old, his large brown eyes looking up at her as she bent down to talk to him. Keep a watch over your little cousin Giuseppe while I'm away at Zia Veneranda's in Paestum. And if Nonna tells me you've been good boys, I'll bring back some fresh eggs and confetti for you. Pasqualino's eyes grew wider, and he smiled, a hopeful, happy little smile when he heard this, for he loved the vari-colored, sugar-coated almonds, known as confetti. Little cousin Giuseppe, a couple of years younger than Pasqualino, began to jump up and down and squeal, confetti, confetti, his bright red curls and freckles bobbing. Pasqualino held his hand, looking at him a bit annoyed, and thought what a baby Giuseppe still was. Yes, Giuseppe, continued Mamma, confetti, but only if you're good, and that means, turning to Lino, and that means, Lino, she continued sternly, staying away from that alley where the Lupo Mannaro lives. Yes, Mamma, agreed Pasqualino, a mixture of fear and curiosity filling his heart upon hearing this last admonition. No, no, Zia Teresa, piped in Giuseppe. We won't go where the Lupo lives. Nonna told us he has a furry head and big teeth like a wolf, and he eats little children if they go out alone at night. Again, Lino gave his cousin a sidelong glance of annoyance. But again, in his heart, he felt a deep twinge of fear. He squeezed Giuseppe's hand as if to keep him quiet. Yes, Pepe. Now be good, both of you, and obey Nonna. She kissed them both on each cheek, then turned and rode her bicycle across the town square, the piazza, and on to the only paved street that led down from the village of Monteforte Cilento, down the mountain, down to the coastal town of Paestum by the sea. "Ciao, mamma! Ciao, zia!" waved the boys after her. The two boys ran to the edge of the piazza, waving to mamma as she pedaled down the serpentine mountain road. It was wartime, and food was scarce now in October. Lino's papa was with the Allied forces just above Naples. Monteforte itself had survived relatively unscathed as the Germans were driven back after the beachhead had been achieved at Salerno. The signs of war, however, were still to be seen. A few bombed-out buildings and a small encampment of American soldiers in a corner of the piazza next to the tobacconist's shop. Monteforte itself, Monteforte Cilento, was old, very old, and built originally as a medieval fortress, with the town itself literally constructed as if cascading down the precipitous face of a mountain. Across the piazza, which formed the top level of Monteforte, there ran only one main road. Throughout the various descending layers of the village, however, a labyrinthine network of wide, age-smoothed stone steps formed interconnecting alleys and streets. The openings to these passageways were accessible from various points around the piazza. Now, before beginning their descent to Nonna's, Lino's dark eyes flashed impishly. "Pepe," he asked, how would you like some chocolate?" "Oh, cioccolata, cioccolata!" Pepe began bobbing again. Lino rolled his eyes, turned, and began pulling his cousin toward the group of American soldiers. "Signore, avete cioccolata per piacere?" Lino implored, in his southern accent, his eyes wide and longing. "Sì, cioccolata per piacere, cioccolata," chirped in Giuseppe. A great, massive, bearded soldier stood up, his helmet and bulging green fatigues dangling with straps and belts, put his hands on his hips, and let loose a deep, hearty, good-natured laugh. The small boys cowered a bit, but relaxed as he reached into a breast pocket and pulled out 2 thick bars of almond-laden chocolate. "Grazie, signore, grazie," as they took the bars and ran toward the entrance to the stairway that led to Nonna Domenica's. "Prego," bellowed the soldier after them, and he laughed again delightedly. Lino and Pepe descended, down through Monteforte, 2 steps at a time. At Nonna Domenica's, they were given a good hot meal of pasta with beans and a piece of hard bread. Afterwards, after minuscule cups of nearly scalding espresso coffee laced with goat's milk, Nonna recounted to her grandchildren tales of the old days when there were stranger, more supernatural things occurring in Italy than today. Her green eyes grew wide and mysterious as she spoke of giant serpents in the mountain forests and people who could disappear at will. The children felt gooseflesh all over. Yet Lino did not really believe these stories. They were just made-up superstitions spooky tales to make the children be good. Nonna tucked them into bed soon after, kissed them, and said some prayers and pagan incantations over them to ward off any possible influence of the evil eye, the malocchio. Finally, she made the sign of the cross and went to bed. Nonna was snoring loudly when Lino woke up, the moonlight streaming past the bunches of hanging red peppers and garlics above the window. Getting out of bed, he pulled on his clothes, then propped Cousin Pepe up a little, who was still half asleep, dressing him in boots, a scarf, and a heavy jacket. Then, still quiet as the little mountain lizards, Lino pulled a small box from under the bed and began dressing himself and Pepe with its contents: rosaries, chains with golden amulets and crucifixes, a red pepper, little pictures of the saints, and a garlic stuffed into each pocket. Of course, he wasn't scared, but better to be safe than sorry. By the time he was done, the two boys looked like vagrant gypsies. Nevertheless, Lino needed these magical trinkets as an added protection, as an added precaution. Tonight he wanted to prove that there were really no such things as werewolves, the Lupo Mannaro that ate children. Gingerly, Lino pushed and carried groggy little Giuseppe out the door of Nonna's house, carefully down the stairs and onto the central stairway at Monteforte's heart. The October air was brisk but not biting, and the moonlight cast dreamlike blues over the shining steps and gray stucco walls of the houses. By now, Pepe was beginning to awaken and made incomprehensible mumblings as he came into full awareness from a half-dreaming state. Lino, he attempted. Where are we going? Lino, who had gone under Nonna's staircase, emerged from the stable, pulling the family's gentle gray donkey, Lisetta, by a tether. To the alleyway by Zio Mauro's house, said Pasqualino. Startled into wakefulness by these words, Pepe began a soft, whiny whimpering. No, Lino, no. That is where the Lupo lives. And he eats children. And you know what Tia Teresa said. I know, Pepe, I know what Mama said, but it just isn't true. Tonight I will show you that there really are no lupi to be afraid of. And besides, look at all the magic you and I are wearing. Pepe now noticed the chains he was wearing and felt the charms in his bulging pockets. He awkwardly crossed himself with his pudgy, freckled little hands and kissed a small crucifix pinned to his pocket. But Lino, he continued, whimpering. Here, Pasqualino proffered him a confetto, which Pepe hesitatingly took and began to nibble on, still sniffing as Lino placed him atop Lisetta, atop the donkey. Pepe, don't worry. I will make sure nothing hurts you, Lino said tenderly, his hand comfortingly rubbing Pepe's knee. Lisetta is here too, don't be afraid, because there are no such things as monsters like the Lupo. Have you ever seen one?" Nibbling and bobbing on Lisetta, almost persuaded now, Pepe, with Lino pulling the tether, began climbing the steps, which seemed to glisten eerily, almost slimy in the pale light. Lisetta was a good donkey, a gentle donkey, and they arrived at the turn where the small alleyway led down toward Zio Mauro's back door, and deeper down toward the alleged lair of the Lupo Mannaro. Before Pepe could so much as utter a peep, Lino popped another confetto into his cousin's mouth, and they entered the alleyway, at the same time crossing himself, sending up a short prayer to the Virgin Mary, and one or two of the Latin incantations he had heard from Nonna Domenica. All was relatively quiet as they crawled down into the nook under the steps behind Zio Mauro's house. Lisetta, lying down behind them as a sort of back pillow, began munching some of the hay pieces that were scattered on the floor. The children settled themselves behind the low wall of the nook, so that only Pepe's curly red hair and Lino's shiny black could be seen over the top. Pepe occasionally whimpered, "Lino," but he was mollified with confetti, which he munchingly gnawed, and which Lino was afraid could be heard all the way back to Nonna's. The fit in the nook was tight, but warm and dry, with gentle Lisetta there, now fast asleep, for that hour was even too late for her. Looking down the alley, Lino could see nothing extraordinary except the light of a sign and an open door quite a ways away toward the bottom of the narrow passage. He could see silhouetted figures in the light of the door, men and women, even soldiers, and muffled music and laughter wafted up softly to his ears. The sign above the door shone with something's bar. He could not yet read such a long, difficult name. All else around him was slumbering quiet in autumn moonlight. A bit hungry now, he took out a confetto for himself and sucked on its sweet coating. Glancing behind, he saw Pepe's curled red mop floating up and down with the undulating breathing of Lisetta's flank, both fast asleep. Pasqualino continued his vigil, determined to prove that no monsters existed, and did not notice as sleep's silent blanket covered his inquisitive eyes. Nor did he notice the clouds that later covered the moon and evening sky, releasing noiselessly a melancholy October rain, until a drip through a crack in the overhead stairs bothered him into wakefulness. By now, even the lights from the bar were turned off, the shutters closed, and so Lino made as if to move, to begin the trip back to Nonna's, tired but disappointed too, when a rustling sound caused the hair on the back of his neck to stand at attention. Lisetta softly snorted and arose, which caused Pepe also to get up. The rain grew heavier and more ominous as the children vaguely saw a swaying figure rising up the rain-drenched steps. Deep Incoherent rumblings arose from the massive figure. As more and more of it came into view, the children saw that it was tall, with a great large back, hunched as if under a heavy load. An overhanging bulb cast a greasy light on a face shadowed and furry, and a body bulging and misshapen, covered with what seemed to be hanging strips as if from tattered clothes. Again the creature made low grumblings and smacking noises as it came now, still swaying from one side to the other, almost upon them. Lino shivered in his fear-paralyzed position, holding Pepe tightly to himself and covering his cousin's mouth, trying to muffle his attempts at screaming. Their eyes were nearly out of their heads as the creature towered unsteadily just above the nook. Lightning suddenly flashed in the sky above. Lisetta seemed to screech as she jumped up from their hiding place. Pasqualino, holding Pepe, now both yelling like crazed banshees, followed just on her tail, almost between the donkey's legs. The figure leapt back, startled, and let out a howling yell. Pasqualino saw only its reddened eyes, its furry face and great white teeth, and arms thrown up and high and back in a gesture of surprise and fear. The children were just coming upon the opening to the main stairway as they heard the great massive creature slipping and tumbling and rumbling and rattling like a sack of potatoes down the stairs, accompanied with sounds like cursings and a clang, clang, clang of something that could have been one of Nonna's soup pots. They flew down the stairs, down to Nonna Domenica's, their chains and amulets bobbing and jangling. After that evening, Pasqualino Acquaviva was not so disobedient anymore. Too, he lost a great deal of his cynicism towards Nonna's old superstitions. He now knew that strange and mysterious things still happen in Italy even today. The end. Well, I hope you enjoyed that all, and yeah, just make some comments if you liked it, or if you have any feedback, I'd be happy to hear that too. But I really enjoyed reading that for you, and I hope if it's good enough, read it to your children or grandchildren if you have them. And I wish you well wherever you are, and look forward to seeing you again. The story is written in 8 other languages, some of which I know and some of which I know, and some of which I don't know. But I hope to do readings about them too, or of them too. And so do take care. Bye for now.